Mr. Lobo here at Times Square for the Sleepless Knights podcast. We are ready to light up our jumbo scoreboard. As you know, our primary goal is 1,074 listeners on Patreon. And thanks to your monthly support, our total number of patrons comes to... maybe the sign's broken.
Maybe they don't know that you can pledge monthly now. I mean, for only $4 a month, you can support 4 episodes of the show.
And $8 a month gets you segment 5, a whole extra show segment made just for them. And we have a whole bunch of items in tiered plan, including the producer credits and sticker club and more.
Patrons also get to hear the show a week ahead of everyone else.
People, as you know, the Sleepless Knights podcast, hosted by Mr. Lobo of Cinema Insomnia and that pantsless producer over here, Paul Sanders of BESTOW TV, is weird, fun, experimental, obtuse, and thought-provoking. If quality programs mean something to each of you and you enjoy being a fly on the wall for our 3 a.m. conversations, please support the show monthly on Patreon. Take out your phones right now. Patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast for $4 or more a month and help us reach our goal. That's patreon.com/SLEEPLESKNIGHTS Now that's only one D in podcast, even though we still emphasize the I.
Hey, where's everyone going?
They're all going home to sign up with us on Patreon.
Yeah, sure.
We'd like to give a big, huge, warm thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Tonight's associate producer is Anita Rifnick. Thanks, Anita. All systems go.
Attention, Sleepless Knights. Thank you for consuming this OSI 74 product broadcast, live from the Black Knight satellite. For optimum performance and safety, your host, Mr. Lobo, asks that you please listen to these instructions carefully. When in a hospital or other healthcare facility, observe the restrictions on the use of electronic devices. Switch off before boarding an aircraft to prevent interference with communications systems. Do not operate this device in the presence of flammable gases or fumes, chemical plants, or where blasting operations are in progress. Always listen hands-free while driving a vehicle. Failure to observe these instructions may lead to immediate termination. It's time now for the show to begin. Thank you. Have a very pleasant evening.
It's a special day today, a hallowed and celebrated time. As the weather gets colder, the heart longs for the...
Friends, Punxsutawney's country...
Wait, what? Paul, what are you doing?
I'm doing my speech. I mean...
No, you're interrupting my warm, heartfelt, spontaneous, non-denominational holiday speech.
I think we've heard enough of that already. We've heard it like way too many times. I've got something in front of me.
Way too many times? I don't do it haven't done it that many times, have I?
Let's see here. We've done it. Halloween, Thanksgiving. Well, the Halloween episode didn't even air.
No. Halloween
and then Thanksgiving, and then we did Christmas, and then
Halloween 3.
We did Unboxing Day, and then we did New Year's, and then we did Chinese New Year's, and we did. It's like every other week you do this speech. I mean, I haven't even been present for this speech, but I've heard it enough times on the air, even though I don't listen to the show.
So you've got something better? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I got something that's more geared to the season, to the spirit of Groundhog Day.
The season. Oh yes. Oh, how festive.
Yes.
Nobody cares about
Everybody cares.
Groundhog
Everybody
Day.
cares. I mean, everybody cares. Can I at least do my speech first?
All right.
Me. Friends, Punxsutaunians, countrymen, it is a special day today. And though local weatherman Phil Connors predicted that this cold, frigid Arctic air, this big mass out of the north, will mix together at high altitudes. Nope, I skipped a line. This big mass out of the north will meet up with all this moisture coming out of the Gulf. It will mix together at high altitudes and cause some snow. It won't hit us here in Pittsburgh. It will push off and hit Altoona. It will be a close call. Can I get an amen? Close enough. This year has made us more fragile. Like Phil, we've been repeating the same day over and over and over and over and over and over again. Knowing there is no tomorrow because there wasn't one today. And regardless, they say that we're young and we don't know. That we won't find out until we grow. Well, I don't know if all that is true, because you got me, and baby, I got you. Repeat after me. Babe? Okay. I got you, babe. Still nothing. Okay. Back to me. They say our love won't pay the rent, and before it's earned, our money's all been spent. I guess that's so. I guess that's so. We don't have a pot, but at least I'm sure of all the things we've got. Now repeat after me again.
Paul, no, okay? I mean, what does this have to do with anything? I mean, you totally took the, wind out of my very thought-provoking, heartfelt, spontaneous, non-denominational holiday speech, for this. I mean, we're running out of time, Paul. I mean, we got to get this podcast going. I'm sure everyone's tuned out already.
All right. How about I give you the short version? I'll get us out of this real quick.
Okay,
all
come on, make it snappy. Make it snappy.
All right, ready? Let me get it down to page. Hold on. I gotta get to page 33, 31, 32, 33. There it is.
Jesus.
You pray now, but you couldn't say amen earlier. I see how it is. In the name of Larry, Rita, and Ned Ryerson, we pray. Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry.
Jesus, it's a good thing I'm not near a car, because I am already angry. I cannot believe that we wasted so much time with that. I'd like to apologize to everyone who has not seen the movie Groundhog Day and has no idea what Paul is talking about. And I also would like to apologize to everyone who has seen the movie Groundhog Day, because that was a travesty. So, again, let's go back to what I was saying anyway. I mean, Groundhog Day isn't even a real holiday, first of all.
What do you mean it's not a real holiday? Everybody goes up to Gobbler's Knob and we worship the
Everyone
rodent
doesn't
and we
do
pick
that.
ticks off of each other afterwards.
I
It's
don't
the
know.
tick thing that's the most important of the holiday.
Picking the ticks off each other? Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like, I guess the apes tend to do that. They do that on every day, though. I mean, that's the thing, is that most of this stuff, other than bothering a rodent out of its hole and being dressed like the Monopoly guy, most of that stuff, most of the country doesn't do anything.
Now, you see, you gave me some direct quotes from the movie, and you say you never watched the movie, and it's apparent that you have watched that movie from what you've just said. So I'm calling you out right there.
Paul, everybody knows about the traditions of Groundhog Day, but it's not like it's a holiday, though. I mean, why do we have that? Why is it treated like a holiday? That's the thing. I mean, it's just the day that we artificially decide that the winter is longer or shorter.
Yes, it's the day that we We all
All
celebrate
agree to lie about the length of the season.
We all celebrate the second coming of the rodent.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it didn't like Bill Murray try to kill a rodent like all through Caddyshack. I mean, I kind of feel like, I don't know. Does this guy have a problem with rodents?
I mean, in his personal life? I mean, I can't say for his personal life, but maybe in his professional life. I don't know. I mean, I'm stoked because, I've been waiting all year for Groundhog's Day. We never broached the subject, so it's like I can't wait
all the time. We talk about this movie all the time.
Yeah.
Every other episode, you're watching the movie Groundhog Day.
Well, I'm watching the movie right now.
Like again?
Yes.
And how is that special when you already watch it every other day?
Because this is space Netflix, and besides this and the nude dude movie and the Palm Sunday whack off movie, I don't know. Like, there's only 3 movies up here. That's all I can watch.
Only movies that have the same plot as Groundhog Day exist on space Netflix. So again, that begs the question: how is Groundhog Day special? How is that movie a special movie for a special day when it's not even a special movie for every day?
I mean, it's special because it's on repeat. So I mean, it's on all the time.
I guess it is on.
It's like a Christmas Story when they play that shit 24/7 for from November till the end of December, and people love that movie. They go out and they buy fragile leg lamps and stuff. So why not Groundhog Day?
I guess so. It's really weird because I think about a lot of the movies that people hold as like holiday movies, and I think that Christmas Story is pretty irreverent. Like, I feel like they're making fun of Americana in that movie. Like, I feel like there's a tongue-in-cheek aspect to that goes over most people's heads, to where I think people look at it for the nostalgia and they're not realizing that it's got some black humor to it. I mean, Jesus, the kid shoots his eye out with a gun, and that's considered like just a across the board family movie. And I think the vacation movies is really surprising, the way people treat those like family movies when the humor is really extra irreverent in those movies. I wouldn't show those movies to a 5-year-old. It's not Rudolph's Shiny New Year.
All right. Well, I guess I'm guilty.
Guilty of what?
Showing those movies to a 5-year-old. We watch Vegas, or not Vegas Vacation. We watch.
You watch Vegas Vacation every Christmas.
We watch Vegas Vacation every Christmas, but on July 25th we watch Christmas Vacation every year on the dot. Make sure.
July 25th.
July
mark the
25th.
Calendar.
Mark it.
Underline.
Lobo will do his
circle.
damn speech on July 25th.
I mean, the thing is that National Lampoon they deliberately were going after adult humor. They were trying to make humor that shitty college guys liked, fraternity guys liked. And I feel like you've got, Animal House was kind of the first movie. And then, by the time we got to Vacation, they're kind of, the guy's like trying to have an affair with Christy Brinkley, and, you've got a lot of inappropriate humor in there, implied incest with the cousins and the, my daddy says I'm the best French kisser or whatever.
That was something that always flew over my head when I was a kid. And I guess it's like when I showed it to my kids, I didn't really, I don't know. I felt no offense with it. So I guess that, it was fine watching it with them. Now, however, watching European Vacation, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? That movie is way worse than the first movie.
Right. They try and make a porno and then it gets released somehow in Europe.
It gets lost and Russ he's out making out with the girls and stuff. So there's a lot of TNA. The sister's pining over her boyfriend, and they're eating sausage and like she's like, oh, the sausage reminds me of my boyfriend.
Yeah, no, that definitely not for kids. Well, I guess we got to take a break now, but I think we should probably start. It seems like we've already found our topic, and that topic is inappropriate holiday movies.
Damn it.
I'm going to tell you a story. At first, it's going to sound ridiculous. But the longer I talk,
We have to find the keys.
the more rational it's going to appear.
I can't believe you found coffee.
Sugar, right?
Yeah.
Hold on. 3. You like 3.
How many times have we been here? How many times?
For me, it's been an eternity.
Groundhog time.
1,000 people freezing their butts off waiting to worship a rat.
The invasion will fail. We lose everything.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Bill?
Ned Ryerson? Do you ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster?
I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen.
Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again?
I die within 5 minutes of landing on that beach, along with every other soldier.
How did you do that?
Come on!
Come find me when you wake up.
I am an immortal. I have been stabbed, shot, burned, frozen, electrocuted. I'm a god.
You're God.
I'm a god. I'm not the god. He's out of his gourd.
You do know what's happening to me.
What happened to you happened to me. You hijacked their power.
How do I control it?
You have to die. Every day. Keep coming here and I'll train you. Again. Your leg's broken.
No, I'm good.
To the groundhog.
I always drink to world peace. Well, what should we drink to?
I like to say a prayer and drink to world peace. Don't drive angry. Don't drive angry.
It's weird that a lot of movies that we think are for general audiences have some irreverent humor. And I'm not the kind of person that, I am very, I don't think anything, I think that everything should be allowed to artistically exist. I don't think we should start editing movies or changing movies or banning movies because they have certain content. But I think we need to be honest with ourselves about the kind of content that are in some of these movies. Everyone seems to gloss over the fact that Dan Aykroyd gets a in the middle of Ghostbusters.
Do I have to censor that?
I don't know.
And if I censor it, do people know what you're going to say?
They could just use their imagination. People don't realize Beetlejuice says the F word, in the middle of, right?
Yeah.
You know that scene?
Yeah, I love that scene because I remember when I was a kid, that was the scene that we always quoted. Nice fucking model. I'm the genie.
There it is. Yeah, I'm the genie. Every impression Paul does somehow goes back to Aladdin. It is interesting because it's like, is it because our culture has gotten so bad that these movies that were designed to be a little offensive and inappropriate, by design, we've talked about some of these other movies before, like Revenge of the Nerds and Weird Science and what was the other one? Porky's.
Yeah. It's weird because I remember as a child those Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds being like a really big deal and that they were getting sequels. But watching those years later, they're like, what was the big deal about? Like, these really aren't that great.
I think things have changed so much. Before it was like, I think the 50s and 60s were very repressed as far as what we saw on television. And, in the 70s, when the 70s got here, I think that people were going to movie theaters to get shocked and to see things that they couldn't see on TV, or at least movie theaters were trying to compete with television, and cable was always trying to compete with broadcast television. And then VHS was trying to compete with broadcast television. I think the only way to compete with broadcast television, since it was heavily censored, was to just have a lot of irreverent humor. It's like, oh my God, they went there. Or did you hear that they said this or they did this in this movie? And now I feel like broadcast television is just as dirty as everything else.
Right.
So now those movies just don't have any power. And it's weird because I hear people always use the excuse like, oh, it was the times and that stuff was appropriate then. It's like, no, that stuff wasn't appropriate then. They knew it wasn't appropriate. They were going there on purpose. They were trying to be offensive. People wanted to see things that were offensive because they just couldn't see that stuff anywhere else. And I think they knew their audience. They were just trying to appeal to teenage boys. And they were, those were the ones that were the latchkey kids and renting those videos. And those were the kids that were sneaking into the movies and watching them. Teenage boys was a big market.
I know with like with Animal House, that opened the door for all that stuff. Because Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds and maybe even Weird Science would probably have never existed if Animal House never existed, and that was just purposely an R-rated comedy.
Yeah, Animal House definitely, again, I think it opened a lot of doors, and I think people forgot all the things about Animal House that were somewhat intelligent and sophisticated. I think all that stuff it's sort of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. People forget that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is pretty tame. You don't see a whole lot. There's no language. There's no nudity. There's just a little bit of gore. But the rep of that movie was so hard that it opened up the floodgates for everything else, and everyone wanted to make the money that first movie made. And I think in bring the parallel there being Animal House was an enormous hit, and Saturday Night Live was an enormous hit, on television, and that was the one show in 7 nights of programming that was trying to be offensive. So that kind of was just a trend in comedy where people were trying to do edgy humor, and and people were understood going in there that they were going to get shocked. It's just like seeing a horror movie. You're going to see someone's head cut off. It doesn't mean that cutting off people's heads was more acceptable. People were seeing it because it was unacceptable, just like you would go see nudity or go see anything else that is taboo. So, it's like, I think that, we just need to be honest with ourselves that these movies had an appeal that was taboo. And, we look back at them with this sort of gauze of nostalgia, like, oh, these were sweet movies from a more innocent time. And now we're not allowed to enjoy these movies because
I wouldn't classify Porky's as a sweet movie from one of our times.
But if you watch it, it's actually Porky's is has some sweetness to it. It has some sophistication to it, especially compared to things that followed.
It's funny is that I remember Porky's, because it's like Porky's came out in like 81, so I would have probably
something like that. Yeah.
So I would probably have been going on like 11 or so, but no, I would have been a little bit younger than that. But anyway, I
would have been 11 or so.
Right. I just remember that being a dirty movie, and that and they were all focusing on them spying on the women in the showers and all this other stuff.
That's what they focused on. Yeah, for sure.
And the playground talk of Porky's, this is a movie. We're not even old enough to see this movie because it's R-rated, but and growing up, never really seeing that because I never saw that movie until much, much later in life, knowing that, that's a dirty movie. That might even be borderline porno, and knowing about the shower scene and stuff. And the shower scene is like so minuscule. Like the whole sex stuff is kind of minuscule to the overall story. Like it really wasn't like how my mind had made it up to be like this porno of TNA and everything, And it's
I know it doesn't quite live up to the rep that it has for sure on that level. No. And a lot of those movies don't, which is interesting, but they were definitely being sold on that appeal.
Right.
And I think that
I guess it's an example of sex sells, so they just sell it that way, whether it's a big part of it or a little part of it.
I mean, it's interesting. You know, I look at the stats for the channel for OSI, and like I said, right now we have since the chronic diarrhea has fallen on us, our numbers are huge. We've got like 5 terabytes. People who are stuck at home avoiding chronic diarrhea. They are watching a lot of OSI 74. We go through 5 terabytes a month of storage.
They couldn't get Porky, so they had to go to OSI 74.
And it's funny looking at the stats because anything that has the slightest promise of sex, like anything that just might have a slight threat of femininity or a sexy gal or something like that happening in it. Like we have a show called Stream Queen Stream, which is a couple of actresses and doing like a talk show. There's nothing really suggestive happens in those at all. But just because there's a couple of attractive women on the thumbnail and it's called Scream Queen Stream, that gets enormous numbers. Sleazy Show gets enormous numbers, which is funny because even though it's called Sleazy Pictures After Dark, most of those movies are just kind of broken down drive-in movies. And Sleazy never has any women on the show. You know, the amount of exploitive content is somewhat limited. You know, and certainly not pornography. And then we've got another show. Rat Bastards TV is another show where a lot of, I think that there are a couple episodes where there's a little TNA. But it's amazing that how high those are ranked, just because there's this sort of appeal. It's got a little bit of sex appeal. And what's funny about it is that people watch those episodes for like 4 minutes. I don't know if it's 4 minutes good or 4 minutes bad.
Or they're just watching it at 4 minutes at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know, I'm sure that Sleazy had high numbers, but I remember that he had Flesh Gordon on.
Yeah, he did.
I ended up revisiting that movie because of a childhood incident of Flesh Gordon 2, of which I rented at the local, what do we have? West Coast Video. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't in the back room. It wasn't in with the dirty movies or it was up front with all the clean movies. And I had misread it as Flash Gordon 2. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Awesome. I love Flash Gordon. I didn't know they made a sequel. This must be direct to video. And rented it. And it's porn. So I had to check out Sleazy P when he did the first one, because I'm like, well, I never saw the first one, and I already owned the second one, so I might as well watch this one.
And what's weird is like Flesh Gordon is one of the grossest like porns. Like I don't think anything in there is really sexy. Like it's kind of got I don't know. It's not very sanitary like that movie. I feel like I don't. I mean, maybe my standards are a little high, but I don't feel like that movie is super sexy time movie. The best part of that movie are the stop motion monsters.
Yes.
In that movie.
Yes, which I remember from the sequel.
But
which I think are even better.
The sex parts are not super super great, not sexy. But what's interesting is, like I said, considering how prevalent porn is. I mean, anyone can go onto a porn site at any time and get free porn. It's funny to me that someone would come to OSI 74 and just be desperately trying to find anything that could satisfy that.
Well, they've come in the door. Why chase them away? You're like, hey, while you're here, you don't have to navigate away. It adds to our numbers.
I mean, I'm not chasing anybody away, and I'm not shaming anyone, but it is interesting though, because I feel bad about it, and then I look at the numbers, and like I said, and I'm going, wow, these things really get clicked on a lot, but people don't stay with those things. Whereas, like, Cinema Insomnia, people watch the whole show. I mean, they watch it for 2.5 hours sometimes. Some of those episodes are 3 hours, and they're watching for that long. And so even though the milkshake brings the boys to the yard, they don't stay for that stuff. So that makes me feel a little better about it. But there is no denying the appeal of TNA, or the threat of TNA in a video or film. I know when I worked for Apprehensive Films, which was a DVD distributor, they would put like a nude woman or a gun on the front of a DVD, and it would double the sales. So they just started finding ways of putting a gun or a woman on the cover of just about any video. Even if there was no gun or no women in the movie, they would somehow find a way to get that on the cover somehow, because it literally makes a difference when people order things. And I even look at some of our episodes, like of Cinema Insomnia, and if there's a woman in a bikini scared of a monster as part of the graphic of the film, that definitely people will watch that episode more than an episode that doesn't have that. So we are still wired to, no matter how much we feel far we've come in our society one way or the other,
right,
we're still responding to that same old 1970s box art of cleavage and a weapon, a knife or a gun or something else.
I mean, your thing with the DVDs is like that seems to me like a trauma tactic as well. It seems to me that was something that they would do if they had no sex in it, or if they did. Or
sure. I remember there was a movie called Stuff Stephanie in the Incinerator, which is a trauma release. And I remember renting it, and it was like this blonde girl with her butt up in the air, and it looked like she was about to get pushed into the incinerator. And the painting was so lush and lurid. And the movie was just this like weird, almost felt like someone's like college film project almost. Like it didn't really go anywhere, and it wasn't very, it was dark, and you didn't see a whole lot, and it didn't have a lot of sex appeal, and it didn't have that much. It didn't have much violence either. It was just kind of like I said, it almost seemed like someone's student film that they bought and put in a nice box. And I remember just feeling really ripped off at that point. Anyway,
maybe that's why, because Lloyd was saying about how they brought My Neighbor Totoro to the United States, and they were the first distributors, but they they currently have issues about that. Maybe that's why, is because they had the TNA shot of Totoro on the original box art. Maybe that was the line.
Totoro in a bra with a knife. Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. I think it would have sold better if they had done that. Anyhow, speaking of empty promises and getting ripped off, we'll be back after these messages. What's the matter, Bartholomew von Puss Puss? You're not eating your kitty gruel.
Jeez, that cat is really ticked off. You better do something about it, Mr. Lobo.
Right, Paul. I'm going to play for her our podcast. It's not like those other podcasts. It's experimental and weird and full of healthful variety.
That's probably because we emphasize the odd in our podcast.
They like how we talk movies, talk shop, play games, do audio dramas, do interviews, take her to the airport, the laundromat, all that. She even likes how we not talk about things.
Like not talking about Star Wars, or how we not talk about Jurassic Park. Basically any show that ends in a one. Hey, look, she's eating again. Slow down, kitty. You're gonna choke.
She loves it. The Sleepless Nights podcast is the 3 a.m. conversation that cats of all breeds and temperaments crave. You and your cats can listen to my pantsless producer, Paul Sanders, and I on the Sleepless Nights podcast with Mr. Lobo on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Can you hand me a paper towel?
You're not dreaming. We're talking about holiday movies or inappropriate holiday movies. Actually, just inappropriate movies.
We're just talking about dirty movies.
that we enjoyed in our youth. I mean, obviously, I watched Flesh Gordon when I was way too young. I remember watching Clockwork Orange when I was way too young. In the break, we were talking about Police Academy, right? I mean, Police Academy, boy, we would snicker on the playground and talk about those scenes, but those scenes were not appropriate from a Police Academy. Well, it's funny because we think of
from my perspective, I saw those movies on television, so I never got the dirty scenes. They were always edited for TV, and then years later renting them, like I rented the whole run of them, and seeing them later, and they're like, oh, there's a lot more going on in these movies than what CBS was airing.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just the guy making the funny noises and, Hook singing Santa Claus is Coming to Town while she's driving through the obstacle course.
Good callback to the holiday, making that a holiday movie now. I'm gonna have to put Police Academy in the Christmas movie section of my.
When you're allowed to watch movies again other than Groundhog Day. That's another movie that we forget that there's a whole plot point around a job in that movie. Lassard is getting from a prostitute, right?
Right.
In the middle of a speech.
Yeah, but he perceives it as being from Mahoney because Mahoney's the one that pops his head out afterwards. And he's like, oh my, oh Mahoney, oh Punky, I'm the genie, ha.
Oh God, Lord help us.
I have a quota of how many of those I have to work in per episode. So
I'm the genie. Yeah. I mean, we might have to be able to recall what the first episode was. Do you know what the number of that episode? So, Police Academy, which I believe had a cartoon, right?
I think so. Did the cartoon come out or did it get canceled before it came out?
I think it did come out. I think there was a cartoon. And they at least had a pilot. I mean, they at least tried it as a cartoon.
I mean, they had the toy. Well, they had to have come out because I think the toys were based off the cartoon. Or were the toys based off the comic? Because I think they had a Marvel comic, too.
I mean, it was huge. People forget how huge Police Academy was. And again, the humor of it was along the lines of Animal House. They were trying to make something for teenagers, older teenagers and young adults to go see that was spicier than what they were getting. Plus, I think the video market, the home video market, reasons to rent a movie versus watching it on TV. And I think movies with that inappropriate material were more rentable because you're watching it alone in your house usually, or in a controlled environment in your home, like you and a couple friends.
Yeah.
So it's not
you
like
and your church group, and you're watching like Porky's, and like, I didn't expect this to go south so quick.
But I mean, a lot of times though, it was latchkey kids, or again, you were watching these things when mom or dad were asleep or weren't around. And I think that a lot of the stuff, was sold on that taboo quality. And if it was, and again, the fact that you did have more control over it, a lot of times when you see a movie in public with a lot of people, you're a little more reserved about what you choose or what you want to see. But where if you're watching it at home, you might be a little more prone to watch something that is a little less appropriate, a little less socially acceptable. Something that I think we brought up on the podcast a few times as far as making motion pictures and how movies are made in general, or how they used to do these focus groups. Actually, they still do focus groups where they pass these cards out after showing them a movie, and then they have them fill out the cards. And the kind of questions that they ask are like, would you tell your friends about this movie? Would you recommend this movie? And movies like Airplane and stuff like that always had really poor return in the cards, because people would think about the racial humor or the sexual humor, and they would kind of either be embarrassed for themselves or they would be sort of suddenly moral and go, I don't want to endorse this kind of, even though they were laughing the loudest when they were watching it in the dark with everybody else. When it comes down to writing it on a card and owning up to, yeah, I would recommend this to my friends, I think they were a little too embarrassed to admit that they caught themselves laughing at some of that stuff. So I feel like these movies, especially in the 70s and 80s, were just kind of a countercultural affect where people were kind of allowing themselves to enjoy this kind of material that was taboo and maybe not acceptable to their neighbors or their family members.
Well, I wish I could think of the name of the movie. I watched a documentary just not too terribly long ago. Managed to get it something other than Groundhog's Day. And it was just basically, it was about like nudity in movies and stuff and how it's used. And it went as far back as like Thomas Edison and how they had rules defined of what was acceptable, how much nudity was acceptable. And back then it was like no nudity was allowed on camera. However, if they were nude and standing still, it was considered art. So the people that were competing against Edison, because they had no chance. Edison had everything locked down, and you couldn't make a movie without him, without going through him. And then there was these people that were trying to usurp him, and that was one of the ways that they could do it was showing nudity, because their rules was that there was no nudity. So they would go around it by having, whenever there was nudity in the scene, the actress would stand still. Because but their rules was if you were standing still, it's art. And that's kind of how they went around it. It goes up through the eras and basically how the skew of porno and then, what's mainstream and stuff like that. I know it was one of the movies during the 80s that they had written that it was just a straight up comedy. And, they come back and they're like, well, can you write in one or two scenes where blah, blah, blah is topless, or Phoebe Cates is topless in one or two of the scenes or, whatever. And they would have to write it in. And there was some directors that were opposed to it where it's like, if it was something that happened naturally, I have no issue with it. But you're forcing this into my script because you want to bank on more sales of tickets. You want people to buy tickets. Right. And it's a really, really good documentary about it and about how, even up to like modern, where it almost got to a point of being abusive, that you have to be nude in order to be my films or you'll never make it in Hollywood. And, people, women actors are more protected by, nowadays than they used to be, but it was really exploitive during the 80s and 90s. Oh yeah,
for sure. And 80s and 90s, and usually like in a 90s film, especially horror films, that shower scene would come earlier and earlier in the movie to where it almost seemed like the first 10 minutes, there was usually nudity in the first 10 minutes of any horror film that you would rent or buy, just because distributors would be looking for that as a to make it bankable. So a lot of times a horror movie would just open right up with the shower scene, just right off the bat. And that was the easiest, kind of quickest. I mean, the shower thing, goes all the way back to Psycho, but in Psycho, you never see her really nudity. You never see her nude per se.
Wasn't Psycho was the aspect that they pushed in that movie that you never saw in movies before was a toilet? Wasn't that the whole thing? Was that you see no nudity, but you saw a toilet, and that was
a toilet. Oh my God. But it is interesting because, that envelope is always pushed in films. And I think, too, it's really interesting that most of that stuff, like, what we were saying with Edison, it's used to compete, or open a new market because the appeal of that stuff is fairly universal. With 8mm films, they were selling people projectors in their homes. People were buying pornographic movies on film and nudie movies and stag films and watching them on film. And that was how a lot of people got projectors into their houses. And then VCRs was the same thing. Right. If you had a VCR in your house, just like, if you had a pager, you were a drug dealer. If you had a VCR, you were watching porn. Right. And that was the stigma.
Yeah, because wasn't that what pushed VHS over beta was that porn supported VHS, and that's how VHS sort of overcame beta, because Beta is actually like a more superior technology, but VHS somehow won out for years. And the claim is that it was because porno took hold to that, and that was their distribution. So
one way or the other, right? Because Beta was a proprietary format, so you had to get a license from Sony to use that format, where anyone could make a VHS. So it was non-proprietary, so anybody could make a VHS. And I think that obviously that's why porn adapted it, and I think that that's why they left Beta in the dust. But one of the reasons, certainly, I agree with that. I don't know if it was the only reason, but definitely the ubiquitous nature of it.
Reason.
Yeah. It's also the fact that you could put more. You could put more on a VHS. Like you could put a whole 2-hour movie on one VHS, whereas on a Beta, some of those ones only Beta would only go like a normal size Beta. You could only get a little over an hour on.
Right.
So a lot of those movies were condensed.
I was taking in history about like the laser discs and stuff, and a lot of laser discs were edited down as well. They couldn't hold as much content and stuff, so a lot of stuff was edited down severely.
Or you had to turn the disc over, or it came on several discs.
Yeah, but even when it came on several discs or whatever, they still had them edited down.
That's hilarious. I it is really interesting. Again, we'll talk about this when we come back, but how a lot of this is all marketing, because in this country, films are not treated as an artistic industry, it is treated as an industry. It's just not treated like we treat art. We treat it like an industry. So it definitely, a lot of the cultural affects of it, are all directed by the almighty buck. And speaking of the almighty buck, we've got some bills to pay. And we'll be right back with more Sleepless Nights.
Look out, villains, creeps, and assorted bad guys.
We're here.
Those crazy cadets from Police Academy are busting out.
Cavalry is on the way.
And they'll stop at nothing until they get their man.
Time to rock and roll, Jonesy. Hit the siren.
So don't miss all the action on Police Academy, the series. Today at 3 on Channel 11.
Police Academy.
This is Jones. Numbskull's robbing the bank.
Each sold separately.
Come in, Mahoney. I'm on the case.
Cops! I'm out of here.
It's karate time. Hi-ya! Sorry, Tackleberry. Eject! Oh!
Look who dropped in. You're under arrest. And underwater.
Case closed. Where'd he go? I'll blast him.
Police Academy. Crash Cycle, Mahoney, Jones, and other figures, each sold separately.
It's Groundhog Day!
You're not dreaming. We're back with segment 4 of your inappropriate holiday film special. A lot of distributors made movies. Even today, you've got $400 million movies. In those days, in the 80s, people were making movies for $20, $30, $40 million. How do you compete? If you're a small filmmaker, if you're making a movie for $60,000, how do you compete with Universal and Disney and all these people who have more money than you? And one of the ways is to try to do something that either they can't do or they won't do. And a lot of legitimate or companies that would consider themselves legitimate, they would avoid certain touchy subjects. They would avoid, they wouldn't want that R rating because, that might mean fewer, narrowing their appeal at the box office or getting picked up by fewer theaters. So a lot of the smaller movies were going for this rough material, but they were making so much money at it that the big boys started kind of following them too, which I think led to a lot of these weird, Miramax making movies like Pulp Fiction, which, people don't think of. I mean, isn't Miramax connected to Disney?
Yes, it was owned. Disney was the parent company for Miramax for a while.
So, no one thinks of Pulp Fiction being a Disney movie.
Right. And I think the reason why they created Miramax is they wanted to compete in the R-rated.
Yeah. So a lot of those companies made found ways to go into that market because those smaller companies that were doing the racier material were making big money on a little investment. I mean, we're at this point now. We're making movies. Disney makes a $400 million movie. If it doesn't make its budget that first weekend, it usually falls off the face of the earth and is considered a failure, right?
Right.
So, it is interesting also because I also feel like our culture's changed so much that it's hard to come up with anything that people can't already see somewhere. I think in a weird way, I mean, the internet has changed all of that, where nudity and inappropriate language is just part of every day on the internet,
right?
For free,
right?
So that's not much of a commodity. So you kind of have to think of what you can't or won't do. And sometimes it's just subject matter. Like I said, I feel like some of the movies from the 70s or 80s, especially since how many horror movies are there with Santa Clauses? I think that's just a taboo. You don't want to see Santa Claus killing someone or someone killing someone in a Santa Claus suit. That's so over the top.
Right.
That's not something you'd see in a Disney movie. That's not something you'd see in a Universal movie.
And most places would turn that down for fear of just children seeing that imagery and associating it. But then fast forward several years, and then you get R-rated comedies like Bad Santa.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of it anymore.
No, it's okay to throw Santa under the bus because so many other people have gone there and have made money doing that. And then I think culturally things have changed to the point where, they feel like that there's an audience, they don't feel like that's something that's going to ruin them forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it is awfully weird, though. I'm trying to think where we're going to go next with movies. And I feel like with speaking of holidays and movies, I mean, aren't all the how many are there any slasher movies? What holidays don't have a slasher yet? Because I feel like they're probably because Happy Birthday to Me. Or no, there's what is it called? Happy Death Day.
Happy Death
Day,
right?
Which is a birthday one, which is also Groundhog Day, right?
See,
that movie is doing the format of Groundhog Day.
You don't like that format.
I didn't say I didn't like that format. I just said it was a cheap format when you're just stuck in a time loop. Time loop and atomic explosion are like the two easiest ways to end a story.
Aliens
you either
from
get stuck in a time loop. Or there's an atomic explosion. Or my other favorite thing is at the end of every movie, there's some kind of vortex. There's some sort of, Earth-threatening vortex or universe-destroying vortex that has to be contended with. That's an easy way to have an ending for something.
Well, I got to rewrite my Cinema Insomnia episode now.
Oh boy. Yeah. But slashers for horror movies. There's a April Fool's Day horror movie, right? There's
Day
Friday
Day.
the 13th. There's a Happy Birthday to Me in addition to the Happy Death Day. There's a My Bloody Valentine. Again, Sacred Cows, right? I mean, you would think and then is there an Easter horror movie?
I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there is too. A guy in a bunny suit. It's too easy, right? Someone must have gone there.
Or just a bunny in general.
I get Night of the Lepus, I guess, is sort of a horror holiday movie. Are there a Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving is one. I don't know if Poultrygeist is particularly Thanksgiving. I know that there's a Thanksgiving horror movie in Grindhouse, in the original cut of Grindhouse. They did a fake trailer for that as part of Grindhouse.
So doing an Easter horror movie search. Here's 6 movies that the first 6 movies that popped up.
All right.
Holidays that came out in 2016.
Yeah.
Night of the Lepus.
Mm-hmm.
The Bunny Man Massacre.
Okay, Bunny Man Massacre. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to pronounce this. DODSNG, it looks like.
DODSNG?
Came out in 2009. Let me click it. Oh, Dead Snow.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, all right.
Just an abbreviation. Easter Bunny Kill.
Ha! I think I heard of that. Yeah, Easter Bunny Kill. Hilarious. And a play on Faster Pussycat Kill. I get it.
And any guesses on what the 6th slot is? The top 6 that you'll never guess it, because I'm like, is this really an Easter movie?
Jesus Christ, Vampire Hunter.
Close.
Yeah.
Critters 2.
Oh, Critters 2?
Critters 2. Oh, actually, yes. They find the eggs. The grandmother takes them in. The kids paint them. They paint the critters' eggs. The critters. There's a guy in an Easter bunny suit that the critters eat from within the suit, and then he busts through the glass of the church.
Wow.
So, yes, that is an Easter movie.
Wow.
Right under our noses. An easy one.
Right under our noses. Yeah, it is. And I guess Alien could be an Easter movie.
With a lot of eggs.
You know, when you were talking about Critters, that kind of reminded me of Gremlins and how that's sort of a Christmas movie, and how violent Gremlins is. Like, Gremlins is super violent.
Right.
And I think that was that was kind of like the 3 Strikes You're Out with when they were when they invented PG-13. I think we did a whole episode about that, right?
Yeah, it was between that and Legion of Doom. Legion of Doom?
No, Temple of Doom. Legion of Doom is from the Super Friends.
They're also a wrestling tag team.
Oh, there's a wrestling tag team. Well, that doesn't doubt me that there'd be a wrestling tag team named after something from the Super Friends. I like how in segment 4 we just completely grind the whole thing to a halt, trying to come.
Let's just name movies. Let's just spend the last 5 minutes. Fuck 5 minutes. Let's spend the last 10 minutes just
grinding our gears. And then trying to think of names of holiday movies,
and then come to a complete halt comes segment 5.
Oh man, we still gotta do a segment 5 after this. We're so screwed.
Well, how about holiday movies that aren't holiday movies? Things like people always claim, like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and.
Yeah, how did that start? Was it Die Hard? Really? I feel like that was kind of the press.
And I don't understand. What I don't understand is everybody's like, Die Hard is a Christmas movie, but not one person mentions Die Hard 2.
Which is also happens on Christmas.
They don't mention Die Hard 2. They don't mention Lethal Weapon. They don't mention Rambo, which takes place on Christmas.
I mean, honestly, a lot of movies take place around Christmas. Terry Gilliam's Brazil takes place, or at least they're giving Christmas gifts. You get a feeling that it's Christmas all the time in that universe. But I think in Monty Python's Meaning of Life, it's Christmas in heaven, right?
I guess.
I mean, it's Christmas scenes and Christmases in a lot of movies.
And all the angels are topless.
Yes.
Bringing it back around.
In heaven, there's great shows on TV. The Sound of Music, twice an hour, and Jaws 1, 2, and 3. I love that ending of Meaning of Life, which is really weird because I feel like that's nobody's favorite Monty Python movie. But I think that is probably my favorite one, just because it kind of splits the difference between just being sketch comedy and being a story. Whereas, like, I feel like Life of Brian is the best movie, where it actually is a movie where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there's a story. Right. I think Monty Python and the Holy Grail is probably the most watchable, but maybe I've seen it too many times. But I think Meaning of Life is probably my favorite.
It's where, I don't really particularly care for Meaning of Life, but I do like this man's about to die.
Well, and Monty Python did things to be inappropriate. Like, that's the thing. It's not like their humor used to be more acceptable. There were people picketing those movies.
Right.
Those movies got banned. Those movies got rated hard. I mean, that is not like a sign of the times that we want to cancel Monty Python now. They were trying to upset people. That was that was a big part of their humor, is that they were being offensive or edgy or testing boundaries or going right for taboos.
See, now I forgot about that. I forgot about all that because, my kids we were quoting, they were watching some of the Monty Python stuff, and we were quoting the dead parrot thing. And then they did the Monty Python Almost Alive tour that they did, that fundraiser they did for
Terry Jones.
Yeah, because he was he needed money for renting his apartment. He had made bad business deals and had no money, so they came together and did this live show. And my kids got super excited because they know the dead parrot, and that was one of the things that they were marketing. It's like, out in such and such field, there's this like 50-foot dead parrot out in the middle of the field, and isn't this hilarious to celebrate this movie? And we had to pay extra to go into it because it was it was streamed live, but because it was a special event, it was a Fathom event, you had to pay more. So I remember it was like $15 a ticket to get in. And I took the kids in there, and they roll out the penis guns, and they sing "Every Sperm is Sacred," and I'm like, "Oh God, I forgot about this shit." We watched all the PG stuff, and it's like I've brought like these little kids, and like my mom's like covering their ears and covering their eyes, and like, oh wow, the damage has been done. I guess.
God.
Oh my.
Yeah. Oh, I always think of the sketch where it's it's a travel agency and the secretary's like, "Have you come to arrange a holiday, or would you just like a?" And the man's like, "I've come to arrange a holiday," and he's like, "Oh, okay, Mr. Johnson, there's a man here who's come to arrange a holiday, and nothing else." I just thought that was really funny. Like, so she wasn't going to give it to him. The guy who is doing his
interview,
arranging his holiday, was gonna do that for him. Monty Python, definitely. Always kind of testing the boundaries and testing the boundaries of good taste. And that was something they got in trouble for from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's really funny because, again, we think of John Cleese and all those guys are these warm, grandfatherly guys. These guys were troublemakers, and they were trying to be troublemakers. And again, the guys from South Park are trying to be troublemakers. And that's why no one ever canceled South Park, is because that's their whole purpose, is to be
shtick.
That's their shtick, is to be abrasive and upsetting and test boundaries and taboos and be obnoxious. So, I think the important thing is to understand what you're watching. Like, who is it for? What is it for? Who's the audience? And if it's not for you, and if there's a song, right? Taboo, what's good for me may not be good for you. Right. I mean, I think that it's I feel like we needed prescriptions for content where a doctor goes, okay, yeah, you can handle this. And they sign a little piece of paper, and then you go and you get your video, and you know that it's something you need and not something you don't need. Because honestly, there is general entertainment that is designed to be acceptable and wholesome for everyone that just makes me want to vomit. And, it's sure it's good. I'm sure those Hallmark movies are good for somebody, but they're very offensive to me.
Right.
So.
And speaking of things that making you want to vomit, let me dust this off again, because I don't think we hit the Hallmark. See what I did there of the speech. So let me try this again. Friends and Punxsutawneyans, countrymen, this is a special day. And And the local weatherman, Phil Connors, predicted that it's cold, frigid, Arctic air. This big mass out of the north will meet up with a small moisture coming out of the Gulf, mixed together at high altitudes, causing some snow. It won't hit us here in Pittsburgh. It will push off and hit Altoona. It will be a close call. Can I get an amen?
God, will you shut the up? You have been listening to the Sleepless Nights podcast, or should we say, pODDcast.
PODDcast.
Emphasis on the odd. Our theme is by Mars Homeworld at Deadhouse Music. Our opening announcement is by Ophelia Necro. She does a radio show called Suicide Watch. And you could reach Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com, or find me on YouTube, YouTube/Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO. Mr. Lobo on Facebook, Facebook/MR.LOBO, or on Twitter, at Mr. Lobo, MISTERLOBO.
Or you can find myself, Paul Sanders, or better known as BESTOW TV, at bestow.tv, on YouTube /BESTOW TV, on Twitter at BESTOWPROD, PROD, and on Facebook, BESTOW TV.
If you want to place an advertisement with this podcast, and gosh, why wouldn't you? We could be talking about you right now. Contact us, Mr. Lobo at cinemainsomnia.com. That's MRLOBO @CINEMAINSOMNIA.com. Or support us on Patreon. Patreon supporters get to hear this podcast before anyone else and a lot of other great stuff, right, Paul?
Sure.
Doesn't get it better than that, right? So come join the fun at
patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast.
That's
patreon.com/sleeplessnightspodcast.
Please stay up with us next week for another Sleepless Nights podcast. Or should we say, pODDcast.
PODDcast.
The best thing about being an insomniac is never having to say goodnight.
Good night.